Joining us now to talk about this is Louisiana Republican Senator Bill Cassidy, who is also a physician, as is his wife. The senator sits on the Finance Committee. Senator, I appreciate the time that you've been taking in the last few days to have conversations with us about this. It is crucial, as Casey said, that this doesn't partisanship just doesn't have a place in this conversation. So let's talk about the specifics that are holding this up, specifically this issue about a slush fund that for the moment doesn't have strings attached to it. So we're talking about $500 billion that the Treasury Secretary and, in theory, the President can have control over, giving to industries, many of which I think you and I can agree will need that money, including the defense industry, the airline industry, the hospitality industry. I think there are a lot of Americans who think, fine, maybe the money needs to be available, but not a dollar of it should be without strings attached.
That is totally a misrepresentation of the process, Al, and it has become partisan that people would have presented as such. The airline is its own set of industry. By the way, these are loans. They are not bailouts, period, end of story. The other sum of money would go to the Federal Reserve that would, as I understand it, I'm a gastroenterologist, not a finance PhD, but would then give loan guarantees to sectors. So it'd be to the hospitality sector, to the nonprofit sector, to the manufacturing sector. These would be, if you will, guarantees to banks to lend, therefore leveraging dollars as much as 8 to 1. It isn't a slush fund. It is a set of dollars that are transferred to Treasury for this purpose. To label it as a trust fund is trying to undermine trust in a bipartisan bill. The way this bill was written, 5 different working committees of both parties, with the Speaker having a chance to veto, weighed in, came up with 5 different segments of a bill and put them together, and now it's being called partisan and a slush fund. That's by Schumer, their leadership. That's not the way it was crafted.
Well, look, insofar as a gastroenterologist and a journalist can have this discussion, what then do you believe the holdup actually is?
I'm not quite sure. If you look at some of the demands Pelosi has put out there, for example, that we need to have aircraft-specific emissions data. That's one of our demands, that every aircraft have emissions data profile to be submitted. That's a demand. We have people losing their jobs as we speak, and she's negotiating for aircraft-specific emissions data. Now, climate change is an issue we must address. I'm not sure now is the time to be going through that public policy when people are losing their jobs and nurses and doctors need frontline support.
Let's go back to the first point when you said it's not a bailout, it's a loan. In my world, they're similar. If you need a loan, an emergency loan, because your business is going to fail and you're depending on taxpayer money, the idea that there should be very specific conditions to that, including no bonuses, no dividends, and no buybacks, is the same thing, right? If I take a loan from my bank to buy a house, the condition is I buy a house and I buy the one that we agreed I'm buying. Do you agree that even if these are loans, even if they are to industries, they should have rules, that my taxpayer dollar shouldn't go to anybody's stock buyback?
I totally agree, and the pot of money that Treasury directly controls, not the pot transferred to the Federal Reserve, the pot that they directly control specifically forbids stock buybacks and puts restrictions upon CEO salaries. The Small Business Administration loans, there's a limit to the salary that can be paid. Keep in mind, under the bipartisan agreement that was agreed to, that the SBA will grant loans to small businesses, and the degree they use that for payroll support, rent, and utilities, that does become a grant. That's for small businesses. But there is a cap on the amount of salary, so someone can't pay themselves $1 million.
Right.
There's a cap on that salary. Those things have been considered, and the fact that it's being misrepresented is cynical. It's undermining trust in a bipartisan project that should be out there now to reassure the American people we've got their back.
All right, it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. What is your sense of how this moves forward, sir?
It is unclear. McConnell just made the point that by the situation, the procedural process that Schumer has brought us to, one senator could object and would stretch out this process till Friday. Now, I don't think any senator will unless it's Schumer. But that said, the very fact that we have not passed it already and instead have the potential of going to Saturday shows you how lightly the leadership of the other party's taking this. By the way, I'll also mention a Democratic senator on another program made the point that his working group was bipartisan, that had worked very well together, that he thought it had come together well, but that the challenge was on the leadership level. McConnell would pass this today. There is a problem on leadership level, but it's not McConnell, and it doesn't appear to be rank-and-file Democrats.
Right. I would say, look, sir, and you've done you and I think have a great ability to have this conversation without it ever becoming unnecessarily partisan. I don't think it's fair to say Democrats are taking this lightly.
All I can say is that that Schumer and Pelosi do not have a sense of we need to pass it today. They are arguing about having emissions profiles on individual jets. That's what we're arguing about. Emissions profiles on individual jets.
My understanding is that the actual holdups are bigger than that. I understand that you're citing a specific example as something that you don't think should hold up the bill, but it does seem broader than that, including the cash payouts that'll go to people who are the hardest hit.
So if you go to the fact that there is going to be, according to Mnuchin, the ability to get $1,200 out, that'll happen. That's in the bill. We double the amount of money available for unemployment insurance.
Yep.
We take care of small businesses provided that they keep their payroll intact.
Right.
And they continue to pay their utility and rent bills. That's good for the investor as well. I can go down the list. We take care of large corporations because they employ people. Now, you don't want the airlines going belly up and all those flight attendants, ground crew, pilots out of a job.
I know, but you and I both remember 2008, 2009, right? Company, and by the way, I will remind our viewers, for all those people who are angry about the auto bailout and TARP, the American taxpayer made money off of both of those. However, it didn't sit well with people that taxpayer money is used as leverage for things that we don't think are fair. So I agree with you, Senator Cassidy. This is urgent. I also think that we do have to make sure that the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Let me ask you about something that you certainly know a lot about as a physician. What's going on in the Senate with the situation with Senator Paul, those who are self-isolating because they may have been in contact with him? Are there concerns around the Senate about whether this infection is going around?
It is unspoken but known. Somebody told me Romney was self-isolating. I said, I saw him across the room at lunch yesterday. He's not self-isolating. Boom, he's self-isolating. And so Rand apparently had contact with 4 other guys, or 3 other guys, because Scott was already out. And so now they're all self-isolating. So, of course, that is understood. And I don't know the medical history of people in the Senate. Average age is about 60. Therefore, if you're 60 and above, you're a particular risk. And if you have high blood pressure or diabetes, you're at particular risk. And so, of course, that is there. And so we would like to get this done, not only for the well-being of the American people, but for the safety of the staff and for the safety of those who are older and the safety of those who have chronic disease.
Senator, as always, I do appreciate the time that you've taken to talk to me. Senator Bill Cassidy of Louisiana
Thank you, Ali.
is a medical doctor, as is his wife, and he's working hard to try and get this deal done. Up